Welcome back to Soul Podcasting Podcast. I'm Demetria, and I've been podcasting since 2005 when I launched my first show, The Christian Ladies Talk Radio. And back then I had no idea what I was doing. I was learning on the fly, recording late at night, editing in small pockets of free time, just trying to figure out how to show up consistently. And over the years, I've built multiple shows, coached dozens of creators, and helped them launch their podcasts in ways that actually connect with listeners. It helps them build authority and move their business forward. Through all of that, one thing has become crystal clear to me. Podcasting is not just about producing episodes. It's not just about downloads or likes or even the occasional shout out from a guest. Podcasting is about clarity, alignment, and intentionality. And yet I've seen it happen time and time again where podcasters start off really strong, they have momentum, they're excited, and then quietly and subtly the show stalls. It's not dramatic, it's not a crash, but it's a slow drift that leaves them feeling frustrated and tired, and then questioning whether the effort is really worth it. So today, I want to talk about this and what I call the podcast identity crisis, why most shows stall after just around 20 episodes, maybe even sooner, and how you can reset before it quietly derails your momentum. So in this episode, we're going to cover why excitement and momentum can slowly fade even when your show is technically doing well, the difference between interesting content and aligned content that actually moves your audience, how to identify when your show has drifted, and practical strategic steps to reset your podcast identity based on what I've done myself and what I've guided creators through. So if you've ever looked at your episodes and you've wondered, am I really moving the needle here? Then this conversation is for you. Before we dive in, I want you to take a moment, grab your favorite beverage, your tea, your coffee, your water, whatever fuels you. I'll give you a few seconds, all right? And then we're gonna get straight into our topic. So here's the truth, my friend. Most podcasters don't fail spectacularly. They don't crash and burn. They just stall. And that stall is almost always invisible at first. I've been there myself. I remember the very first season of my homeschool podcast. This one was in 2012, and I was recording episodes late at night, scheduling them around parenting and homeschooling, editing these shows, promoting them to my homeschool list. At first, everything felt really exciting. I was learning, experimenting, engaging with listeners who really enjoyed my content. But around episode 18 or 20 or so, something subtle started to happen, and I started noticing that I was spinning my wheels a bit more, trying to come up with content ideas. I was still showing up though. You guys, I never quit. I was still showing up, but my episodes were not building toward anything that I felt besides homeschooling content. For the sake of creating homeschool content for my audience, I just kind of felt scattered. My energy felt off a little bit, and I started wondering, am I really making a difference here? I know people are responding, but is this doing what I need it to be doing? And here's the thing, I wasn't alone. Across dozens of creators that I've coached over the years, the pattern is consistent. Episodes tend to pile up, momentum slows down, and engagement starts to plateau. Podcasters begin to feel invisible, not because their content isn't good, it's just because their shows drifted away from the clarity that they started with, or maybe they didn't have clarity to begin with. And that's that identity crisis. It's really not about your microphone and your editing and even all of your fabulous ideas for your show. It's about whether your show has a clear guiding purpose that informs every single episode, every single guest, every topic. What is that guiding purpose? And here's where I see most podcasters getting stuck. It's we confuse interesting with aligned. So I've been guilty of it. When I launched Soul Podcasting Collective, I kind of wanted to cover everything that felt engaging, to my audience. So for you guys, I wanted to create information on tools and workflows and guest strategies and mindset and planning and all the stuff that has to do with podcasting. So I kind of began this podcast with the idea that I would just sort of throw spaghetti at the wall and see what hit. And in a way, that's a great way to kind of do a ruling out of things that aren't going to work for you. And that's what I did. It was valuable. It was interesting, but not all of this stuff was aligned with the transformation that I eventually wanted to deliver to my listeners. And that's the difference. Like, interesting content keeps people entertained, but aligned content moves them toward a clear outcome, whether it's understanding your framework, seeing your expertise and how that can be of help to them, or just taking action with an offer that you provide. So if you're producing episodes that are just nice to have rather than need to have for your listener, then you're creating noise instead of impact. And I hate to make that sound so harsh, but really you want to be creating impact. Downloads may rise and fall, engagement might look decent, but the show isn't moving the needle. And that's where your frustration might be coming in. Alignment is what converts listeners into clients, fans, and advocates. It's what creates momentum that lasts. So how exactly does a podcast drift away from its purpose? I see it happen in a few different ways, and the first is your topic drift. I'm going to give these 3 categories that are a different type of a drift. And the first is your topic drift, where episodes no longer tie back to the central premise of your show. You might think, this guest has such a great story, but you know what? If it doesn't relate to your audience's transformation, the connection might get lost. I've been there. Okay, I've hosted fantastic guests over the years whose content I truly loved, but it didn't always serve my core audience in the way that I intended. And I learned that through many, many bouts of trial and error over the years. So topic drift is a thing. Watch for that. And just be careful that your episodes tie back to your central premise or the central theme of your show and what you're wanting to do. Number 2 is your format drift. So your original episode structure might slowly change over time. Maybe you started with solo episodes and then you moved into interviews and then maybe a panel or maybe some co-host segments. But without intentional planning, your audience starts to feel a lack of consistency. So they don't know whether you're going to be solo or interviewing or having a panel or co-hosting or what's going on. And so I've done a number of things over the years and I've tried a number of formats, and now I finally have figured out what works for me. But it takes some time to actually feel that you know what you're doing and that you know how you like to better present your shows. So for me, that's going to be a combination of interviewing and solo episodes. But some of you might have a co-host and that's your format and you show up every week with your co-host. So your audience will get used to seeing you and hearing from you in that format. You kind of want to give your audience what they're looking for, right? So have the format be something stable that your audience knows what they're going to receive. And then the third drift would be your goal drift. Sometimes podcasters evolve personally, like I have over 20 years, like as we all do, or you may evolve professionally, and their show doesn't always evolve with them. This creates this kind of dissonance between what you're offering and what your audience expects. So the effect of this is that your momentum might disappear, your engagement might plateau out, you start questioning your work, you wonder if you should give up or rebrand completely. And here's the critical insight for this. It's that this is not indicative of failure of you and what you're doing on your podcast. It's just a clarity problem and it can be addressed and fixed. It's that easy. It's fixable. And so I'm going to give you a 3-step framework that I use with my own shows and with creators that I coach. And the first is that you're going to need to audit your episodes. I know auditing is not sexy or fun. Okay, this is hard work. It's behind the scenes. Nobody's watching. This is just you auditing your own shows, or you can have a professional do this for you. You can have someone who is clearly invested in podcast coaching, such as myself, who would love to help you do that. But get an audit done. Listen objectively to what your audit is telling you. Identify which episodes support your core premise and which are just nice, but not strategic. I do this myself for my own shows. I create a simple spreadsheet. I note any alignment that is there or not aligned, and any engagement and topic relevance. And seeing my show laid out like that reveals patterns that I can't see when I'm in the moment. So I'm going to suggest you do that as well. Create a simple spreadsheet, and in your spreadsheet, you're going to identify how your show is aligned, whether your topics are relevant to your mission of your podcast, and whether you're receiving the kind of engagement that you're looking for. And there are a ton of other things you can be looking for in your audit. So you can be auditing your titles and your descriptions for SEO. You could be looking for not just engagement, but for how you're promoting your business throughout the content. There's a lot of different ways to audit your podcast, but this is a first step to seeing whether or not your identity is infused throughout your shows and whether or not you're on brand and doing what you have set out to do when you first started your podcast. The second step for you, I would ask you to do after you audit your episodes, is to identify your core transformation. You're going to ask yourself, if a listener could only hear just a few of those episodes, what would they take away from it? Like, what knowledge, what mindset are you promising your audience? What kind of clarity are you telling them that they're going to receive as a result of listening to your show? So for my coaching clients, this step alone often sparks kind of this aha moment. Suddenly your episode has a measurable purpose. You can say, oh, I see that I need to be focused on X and not Y, right? And so you'll be able to identify those things that are worth your time and maybe topics that are maybe not so much worth your time. Your third step is to plan the next part of what you're doing, your next season, intentionally. Map out your next season, a couple of episodes, batch them, choose your topics, choose your guests, and formats that directly support the transformation you want to make. Decide what to say yes to and what to say no to. And this is how momentum returns: strategically, intentionally, and sustainably. And when I did this reset for my own podcast, it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders. My episodes felt sharper and cleaner. My energy returned for that podcast, and my audience noticed the refreshing energy that I brought to it. They engaged more with it. They trusted more. Ultimately, the show became a vehicle for results and not just content. So one of the things I'm planning to do, I may or may not do this. So this is something that I've got going on in the back of my head. I have just recently brought a 14-year podcast to an end, but I also called it a pause. When I told my audience that I was going on pause or going on break, I intentionally did not tell them that I wouldn't be returning, for the reason that I might actually return, but not in the same way. And so one of the things I'm doing now as I evaluate that podcast, which is my Christian Homeschool Moms podcast, I'm reevaluating how I want to resurface or come back with that show. It definitely would not be a show about homeschooling anymore. So I would want to figure out, my next steps for how I want to continue the work, but in a different way. The same audience, but in a different format. So that's something that I'm at the moment considering, and I may do a relaunch. And I'm excited about the idea of making that kind of a pivot where it's maybe not complete pod fading, but reevaluating what my work is there and bringing more strategy, more intentionality to what I'm doing. So I'm not just podcasting for the sake of podcasting, right? And bringing the same content for the sake of it. Once that season of my life is over, it's over. And it's okay to make the pivot and to stop something when it no longer serves a purpose and to move on to something else. And so I'm excited about what could potentially be for a renewal of that podcast, but in a different way. Once again, I haven't completely decided if I'm going to do it, but if I should do that, it'll be within the next couple of months or so. And so I'm just talking to different people to see what their ideas are, and we'll see what happens. So let's just be honest about all of this podcasting business. This is emotional work, you guys. It's so frustrating to feel invisible when you pour hours into your podcast. And I've been there, and I've stared at stats late at night, questioning if all the time and effort were worth it. But the truth is that feeling comes from lack of clarity, not lack of talent or lack of effort. So when you realign yourself, momentum doesn't just return, it multiplies. You'll feel confident in the topics you choose, the guests that you invite on your show, the stories you're telling. Your audience is going to feel that confidence too. So here's what I want you to take away from all this. Most podcasts stall because of clarity and alignment, not talent or effort. Interesting content is not enough. Aligned content drives results. Strategic resets, like auditing your episodes, clarifying your transformation, planning your next seasons or your next batch of episodes, are how momentum returns to you. If you want a practical tool to help you do all of this, I've created the Launch Confidently Podcasting Checklist. It's designed to help you elevate your show, plan your aligned episodes, and move forward strategically. And you can download it in the show notes today. So take a look at your own podcast and ask, am I drifting or am I aligned? That reflection alone can change everything. So again, thanks so much for spending time with me today, and I'm going to see you in the next episode. Happy podcasting.